Should we do the English as well? Okay, so same thing, in one voice, all together. O Tulasi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has their wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Vraja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays, may I always swim in the love of Shri Shri Radha and Govinda. So, of course, we know that, probably many of us know that Vrinda Devi is the queen of Vrindavan. Radharani is the queen of Vrindavan, but Vrinda Devi is in the sense that she is the one who's managing all of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. She's making all the arrangements for their pastimes. And she's also, just like Srimati Radharani, she is an expansion of Krishna's Hladini Shakti potency. So in a sense, she's one and the same as Srimati Radharani. Radharani actually worships her in order to have devotion for Krishna. So there's these interesting dynamics and relationships between the divine couple and their intimate devotees, almost like they're one and the same, but at the same time they're all serving each other. And as we know, Krishna, even though he's the Supreme Lord, he considers himself a servant as well. And there's always this competition of service in the spiritual world of, let me serve you, no, let me serve you. So that's the relationship that Vrinda Devi has with Srimati Radharani and, of course, the other associates, the other gopis in the spiritual world. The story of her wedding with Shalagram, the first thing that's always struck me is that we have a plant marrying a stone. So that in and of itself is quite unique and intriguing and interesting. Of course, with our understanding that Krishna comes in every species of life and that he's actually manifested all over, in all the universe, in all forms in nature, there's nothing so surprising actually about it. But still, how often do we celebrate the wedding of a plant to a stone? Right? Well, actually, we do it every year. So the story behind why this happened is just as intriguing. And there's three things that really jump out to me. First of all, why is it that Tulsi Maharani marries a cowherd boy, Sudama, even though she wanted to marry Krishna? She was madly in love with Krishna. So why did she marry a cowherd boy instead? Another thing that stands out to me is why is it that Shankachuta, who of course was Sudama, conquered all of the demigods who are devotees of Krishna, even though he was a devotee of Krishna? And finally, the thing that I really appreciate about this story, and so many stories of Krishna, is how he enjoys stealing what belongs to him. Everything and everyone belongs to him, but he likes to steal them. So there's all these stories about how it seems that someone or something belongs to somebody else, and then he has to, in his sneaky way, steal it. So as far as Tulsi marrying Sudama, it's quite an interesting story and also tragic in some ways. But of course, in the spiritual platform, tragedy is also ecstasy. It's all joy, it's all bliss. Tulsi and Sudama were both cursed by Srimati Radharani. She is the most merciful. She's even more merciful than Krishna. And yet, the people who are closest to her see another side of her. They see what we call her man, her anger. And Krishna loves her man. he gets so much pleasure out of riling her up and then pacifying her. And so, of course, the story with Tulsi is one of those, and Sudama, both of them. They're both times where Krishna riles her up. With Tulsi, Krishna enjoyed with her, and she was in so much ecstasy that she fainted. Now, usually the gopis would be a little more discreet, and they wouldn't, in Radharani's presence, they wouldn't openly engage in loving pastimes with Krishna, not usually. Anyhow, but because she fainted, she was there with Krishna when Radharani showed up. And so Radharani cursed her to come down to the earth planet. And with Sudama, what happened was that Krishna was actually with Srimati Radharani, but he got distracted and he basically ran off with this other girl, Viraja. And so Radha's looking for Krishna, and her friends tell her, he's with Viraja. So she walks in on them, becomes furious, curses Viraja to become a river, and then Krishna just runs off. She finds him with Sudama, and in front of Sudama, she starts yelling at him. And Krishna just tolerates, and that's actually what he does with Radha. He's very submissive, actually, with her. He's a rascal, but when he gets in trouble, he's quiet, and then, he begs forgiveness. But Sudama was very offended by how angry she was, so he spoke up to Radha. How can you speak to Krishna like this? And Radha then cursed him. And she said, you're going to be born in a Danava family. Now, the Danavas, this is interesting. The Danavas come from Kashyapa Muni and his wife Danu. And they're brahmanas, they're above the demigods, actually. They're very elevated personalities, but somehow the Danavas in general are inimical towards Krishna. But not Sudama. Of course, Sudama is Krishna's very intimate cowherd boyfriend. Anyhow, so he was born of a Danava named Damba, who did 100,000 years of austerities specifically to get a son who would be a devotee of Krishna. So his father was also a devotee. Anyhow, so he's born in this family of people who are antagonistic towards Krishna, but he himself is a pure devotee of Krishna. Meanwhile, Vrinda Devi took birth also in a royal family. Her parents their family had been experiencing misfortune for many generations, actually. And so they prayed to Lakshmi because she's the goddess of fortune, and they specifically prayed that she would become their daughter. So that was Tulsi Maharani. So Tulsi Maharani is actually a partial expansion of Radharani, and she's considered to be an expansion of Lakshmi. Now it's interesting with Sudama, he is also a partial expansion of Krishna. I was just hearing in the Gopal Champu how when Krishna stole the clothes of the gopis, he took 4 cowherd boys with him. He took Dama, Sudama, Vasudama, and Kinkini, because they're actually just manifestations of, his mind, his intelligence. Sudama was his intelligence, his thoughts, and his ego. So they're basically one and the same with him. And there you go, that kind of answers my curiosity right there. In one way, there's actually 2 answers to how is it that Tulsi is marrying a cowherd boy instead of marrying Krishna when she was madly in love with Krishna. So yeah, as soon as Tulsi Devi was born, she immediately left. She was already full grown. She is eternally a 16-year-old youthful girl. She immediately left, I think it was for Bharadwaj, and she performed austerities for 100 celestial years in order to marry Krishna. Sudama, as Shankachuta, the son of Damba, he did the exact same thing, except he performed austerities. He also left home, not immediately, but he left home and performed austerities, not for Krishna, but to marry Tulsi Devi, because he had been attracted to her in the spiritual world. So again, he's a manifestation of Krishna, but he's not. He's also a servant of Krishna. And she definitely was not praying to marry him. She was praying to marry Krishna. Brahma comes to her and he says, yes, you will marry Krishna, but there's someone who wants to marry you, Sudama. So first you're going to marry him. Brahma also goes to Sudama, or Shankachuta, and he says to Shankachuta didn't want to just marry Tulsi, he also wanted to be unconquerable. So Brahma gave him an amulet from Lord Vishnu that he said, if you wear this, it will be an armor for you, and you'll be unconquerable. He said, and meanwhile, go to this forest, and Tulsi's there, marry her, and as long as she's faithful to you, you will also be unconquerable. So he said you'll be unconquerable, but there were two caveats there. So no one can be forever completely unconquerable, right? Anyhow, so Sudama Shankachuta, I need to call him Shankachuta because that's his name in this form, he goes straight to this forest, he meets Tulsi Devi. Meanwhile, and this I also find very interesting, Kamadeva steps in, Cupid, and he pierces her heart with his love arrows specifically so that she'll fall in love with Shankachuta. She was in love with Krishna, and she needed to fall in love with Shankachuta in order to, be happy to marry him, right? So this is the other side of this question. Why did she marry Sudama instead of why did Krishna arrange that? It pleases Krishna to satisfy the desires of his devotees. And Sudama is his dear, dear devotee. So it gives Krishna great happiness that he sees, oh, my devotee wants to marry, Vrinda, then I'll arrange it. And then for Vrinda, she is so connected with Krishna and with his desires because of her love for him, that his desire becomes her desire, and it really is her desire. And Kamadev is also Krishna's servant, so he's also helping to facilitate their desires. So as soon as she hears from Brahma, oh, I'm supposed to marry Sudama in this, his form of Shankachuta, it becomes her desire because she understands that it's Krishna's desire. So yeah, he meets her there, and because I'm supposed to keep this short and sweet, they actually, I'll just say briefly, they had a bit of a debate, and Tulsi Maharani was very happy to be defeated by him. It was a very sweet debate. I can tell you some more detail. She basically said, why would you want to get married? And she talked about a woman's very base nature if she's affected by the lower modes of nature, that, you can't trust a woman, that she'll act sweet, she'll be submissive and loving, but actually she's just out for herself, and she'll become very angry at you if you don't fulfill her desires. And she goes on and on, just, talking about how horrible women are. And she doesn't say can be, she just says they are. So he very sweetly says, okay, well, there's some truth to what you're saying, but it's not actually true, because there are other women who aren't like this at all. And he gives the examples of course, Lakshmi, Srimati Radharani, and he says, don't worry, you're not one of those types of women. So she's satisfied because with very sound examples and logic and argument, he's able to defeat her. And so she says, okay, you're worthy, I can marry you. When Brahma comes along, which this strikes me as so funny, he's like, why are you wasting time talking? Get married. And their marriage wasn't like what we're doing today. It's called a Gandharva marriage, which is just by agreement. It's just they fall in love and they just decide to marry. They promise each other that they will marry, and that's it, they're married. Just like that. So that's what they did. And they went on to have a very, very beautiful, loving, very romantic relationship. They traveled from forest to forest, mountain to mountain, beautiful rivers and waterfalls, and they camped out on the banks of these rivers, and they gave each other gifts of beautiful jewels. And it's so sweet. It's described how Vrinda Devi was the first one to give him gifts. She gave him a jeweled ring and many other jewels and a garland of parijata flowers. And then she touched his feet and she said, "I'm at your service." He then proceeds to give her basically all these ornaments from all these different demigods. He just loads her with gifts. And then he takes her feet and he places them on his heart and he says, "I am your servant." And this was so beautiful because this is what I was saying in the beginning, that in the spiritual world, all relationships are a competition of service. So she's saying, "I'm your servant." And he says, "I'm your servant." And there's just this mood of giving and always being aware of what does the other person want and how can I serve them and their needs. The other thing that strikes me is how much they did enjoy a romantic relationship. Sometimes in spiritual life we think that we're not supposed to enjoy anything because, well, we're in the material world with a material body and we're supposed to, rise above that. But actually, Krishna wants us to enjoy. He wants us to enjoy in connection with him, in a relationship with him. And the basis of their marriage to each other was service to Krishna and giving pleasure to Krishna. And so naturally, so much enjoyment was there. And it's interesting, there's so many studies that show that the happier someone is, the more they allow themselves to enjoy, the healthier they are. In other words, we're supposed to enjoy. So yeah, they actually enjoyed 4,300,000 years together. So that brings us to my next curiosity. How is it that Shankachuta conquered all the demigods even though he's a devotee of Krishna? Why is he causing all this disturbance to other devotees? So during that, they traveled for the beginning of their marriage. It's like they had an extended honeymoon, but eventually they did settle in his capital city. At which point, and it's not described how long it took him, but he conquered all the demigods and he took over all their kingdoms and sent them scattered everywhere. I mean, they were just running. I mean, we have this happen as also with Bali Maharaj, who was also a devotee. So this happens repeatedly, that we have Daityas or Danavas who are generally inimical. All of a sudden, they're actually devotees, but they're still conquering the demigods, right? So of course the demigods they do their usual thing. They go first to Lord Brahma, the creator, and then Brahma's like, "I don't know, I can't help you." So they go to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva says, "I don't know, can't help you." So they go to Lord Vishnu. Now Lord Vishnu explains to them the situation, why Shankachuta is undefeatable. He gives a trident to Lord Shiva. He says, "You will defeat him, and I'm going to make sure it happens because I'm going to make sure that we get his amulet away from him, and I'm also going to make sure that his wife is unfaithful to him." So Lord Shiva goes and camps out on the outskirts of the city. And it's such again, how much they loved each other. It's such a beautiful thing. Shankachuta, after a messenger comes and basically says, "Give the demigods back their kingdoms or Lord Shiva is going to attack you." And he's like, "Okay, Lord Shiva's going to attack me. I'm not going to give their kingdoms back." So he has one night left with Vrinda Devi, with his wife. And, you can imagine how heavy that was for her. And anyway, they're both devotees of Krishna. Not only are they devotees of Krishna, but they remember their previous lives. Brahma told them, and he also blessed them, that you'll remember. So she actually remembers her love for Krishna, her romantic love, and how much she wants to actually be with Krishna. And Shankachuta, since he's also a devotee of Krishna, he has no envy or jealousy of that. And so he reminds her, you love Krishna, and this is our time. It's our time to go back to him. You don't need to be worried. He also just talks to her about how this is the way it is in this world, that, everything that comes is going to leave, and it's just, But even then, at a certain point, she's weeping, and it's pretty intense. But by the end of the night, she's feeling peaceful, and she's just appreciating that she gets to have that one last night with him. Meanwhile, he goes to meet Lord Shiva, and of course, since he's a devotee of Krishna, naturally he's very respectful to Lord Shiva. Bhadrakali is also there. That's, of course, Shiva's wife in her ferocious mood. And Kartikeya is there. So many demigods are there. And Lord Shiva says to him exactly what I'm asking here. How is it that you're a devotee? And you're doing this? You know, you're terrorizing all the demigods. Anyway, he says what you would expect a Danava to say. He says, Vishnu's not fair. He says, you know, we Danavas and Daityas, we churn the ocean of milk alongside the Devas, alongside the demigods. And what did Vishnu do? He cheated us out of our share of the nectar. He gave it all to the demigods. Plus, he killed Hiranyakashipu. He killed Hiranyaksha. He's killed so many Danavas and Daityas. You never hear about him killing Devas. So he's not fair. And so, no. I'm not going to give them their kingdom back. And then Lord Shiva's like, okay, I guess this is it then. We're going to war. And he tries to talk Lord Shiva out of it by saying, you know, you're not going to get any honor by killing me. You're so much more powerful than I am. What is it going to do for you? And Lord Shiva's like, no, you're in a Brahmin family. Kashyapa Muni, of course, they're Brahmanas. He said, and Brahmanas are higher than me. So don't worry, there's honor in defeating you. Anyway, it's interesting, though, just how respectful he is to all of them. So they're having this discussion. They're about to go to war and try to kill each other. But there's no envy. There's only this, like, joyful, competitive mood. So I was thinking about it, and I thought of two reasons why a devotee might behave in this way. And one of them is that Krishna really is impartial. So Shankachuta is saying he's partial, he's done this, he's done that, to the Danavas and Daityas. But the fact is, he does love them as much as he loves the Devas. And so he himself, and you could say Shankachuta is at least a partial manifestation of himself, or his advanced devotees will actually take the sides of the demons, of the Danavas and Daityas, in order to basically show his impartiality and his mercy for them. A prime example of that is Lord Balaram. Lord Balaram took the side of Duryodhana. Balaram was also very kind to Rukmi. Eventually he was the one who killed Rukmi, but for years and years he supported Rukmi. So that's one reason. And then another reason is that Krishna really enjoys, and his devotees really enjoy, a good fight with each other. Anybody who has that fighting Kshatriya spirit knows how much pleasure there is in fighting, especially when it's with a friend. So there isn't that, anyway, there isn't that hatred. It doesn't feel good, right? So this is an opportunity for Shankachuta, Lord Shiva, and all these different devotees to have a really good time, to really show off how incredibly powerful they are. Right then and there, they get to war. Shankachuta at first is victorious with no problem at all. Kartikeya then comes into the scene, and as soon as Kartikeya comes into the scene, the Danavas start to have a hard time. But Shankachuta is not conquerable. So Kartikeya gives up. Bhadrakali comes in. Wow, what a fight. Not only with her against Shankachuta, and I recommend that you hear or read this story. It's wow. Someone's got to make a movie, like a good one. I don't know if it'll ever happen. Anyway, she's swallowing 10 million Danavas at a time. And when she's finally done, there's only 100,000 left. And those are the ones she's reporting to Lord Shiva. And she tells him, those are the ones who managed to, you know, sneak out, like somehow climb out of her mouth as she was chomping all the other ones. But yeah, she actually gets to a point where she's about to kill Shankachuta. And a voice from the sky comes and says, don't. He has this blessing from Lord Brahma. And we need to honor his boon. We need to honor the word of Lord Brahma. It's really interesting because Krishna himself is very tricky and will lie and cheat, but he's very careful that his devotees are not liars and cheaters, that we can trust the words of his devotees. So Bhadrakali desists. One other interesting thing is she's throwing weapons at him that are from different devatas, different demigods, like, Shiva's weapon, Brahma's weapon, and he destroys all of them or somehow, diverts them. When she sends Vishnu's weapon, though, he just drops to the ground and offers obeisances. And because of that, Vishnu's weapon just shoots up into outer space. It's like, okay, I'm not going to kill someone who surrenders to me. Then finally, Lord Shiva steps into the battle. They fought for a full year. And it had the same outcome as the battle with Bhadrakali, where he had that trident. He had that trident that Lord Vishnu had given him that was supposed to be able to kill Shankachuta. But again, a voice comes from the sky and says, please honor the boons given by Brahma. So at that point, the demigods are just like, Krishna always does this, He always pushes it to the limit where the demigods just become desperate. They're like, come on, please. They've been fighting he was fighting for a year with Lord Shiva. Who knows how long he was fighting with Bhadrakali. It's not described. So Krishna, actually Vishnu, he's in this form as Vishnu. He does what he likes to do. And that's where we get on to the third point I brought up, that he likes to steal what's already his. First, he comes as a brahmana, and he approaches Shankachuta, and he just very simply asks. He says, can I have your amulet? Shankachuta freely gives it. He wasn't worried. His wife was going to be faithful, so it didn't really matter, right? But then Vishnu dons this amulet, he puts it on, and he takes the form of Shankachuta. He goes back into the capital city and somehow arranges, maybe because the people there see him, but somehow he arranges all this fanfare and celebration as if Shankachuta is returning victorious from battle. And Vrinda Devi welcomes him. She welcomes him into her bedroom, and she asks him, so how did you defeat Lord Shiva? And he said, ultimately, Lord Shiva just decided to give the kingdom of the demigods back to them, and I agreed. So, we just reached an agreement. Because, of course, he couldn't say he defeated Lord Shiva. That's not possible. She wouldn't believe him, right? Anyway, of course, she's so happy because that whole time he was gone, she was basically doing all these vratas, all these austerities, fasting and praying. And then here he is. He's come back victorious. Meanwhile, Lord Shiva lifts this trident and throws it at Shankachuta. Shankachuta understands this is it. So he just drops down to the ground. He closes his eyes and he blissfully meditates on Krishna's lotus feet. And he just happily goes back to Goloka Vrindavan. It's described that when he arrived back there, for them it was only half a moment that he was gone. One part I skipped is that Radha actually really regretted cursing him. And as soon as she cursed him, she started crying. And she's like, no, please don't go. I'm so sorry. Krishna said, don't worry. He'll be back in just half a minute or half a moment. So yeah, there he was, boom, back. And he actually sat on both of their laps and they embraced him. They were so happy to have him back. Meanwhile, Vrinda Devi understood that this wasn't her husband. There was something different. She knew her. Come on. She and her husband had been together for 4,300,000 years. That's enough to know someone quite well. So she understood. And she said, you're not my husband. She said, who are you? And I'd like to actually read exactly what she said. It's quite heartrending. He assumed as soon as she said that, he assumed his original form as Lord Vishnu. She said, "O Lord, you are like a stone. You are merciless. You violated my chastity by deception, and by this means you have killed my husband. O Lord, you are merciless. Yes, your heart is like a stone. Therefore I curse you to become a stone. Those who call you holy are doubtlessly wrong. Your devotee committed no offense, and yet for the sake of others you killed him. Why?" So she was really upset. It's interesting, she wanted to marry him, and even her own husband Shankachuta was saying, don't worry, this just means you'll get to marry Vishnu, Krishna. But still, she was so upset with him. He responded, "O exalted one, you performed austerities for a long time to get me as your husband, and Shankachuta also performed austerities for a long time to get you as his wife. By that austerity he fulfilled his wish. It was then necessary for me to fulfill your wish." So of course, this is, like I said before, Krishna likes to get his girls riled up and then pacify them. So that's what he's doing here. "For this reason I did what I did. Now leave your earthly body and assume a spiritual body and be married to me. Be like Lakshmi. Your body will become a famous river known as Gandaki, a virtuous, pure, and transparent river in this holy land of India. Your hairs will be transformed into holy trees, and since the trees will be born of you, they will be known as Tulasi trees. All the residents of the three worlds will perform worship with the leaves and flowers of this tree. Thus you, Tulsi, will reign as the best among trees and flowers." Yeah, the name Tulsi actually means matchless or incomparable. So compared to Tulsi, no other flowers, no other plants compare to Tulsi. And this Gandaki river, it flows in the Himalayas in Nepal. And Vishnu actually appeared there as a mountain. And this mountain, of course, she cursed him to be a stone. So he respected her curse. And this mountain is broken down by these special worms into small stones that we call shalagram shilas. And so that's why those stones are marrying the plant Tulasi. So just quickly at this point, I'd like to read some of the blessings that Tulasi will bestow. "Whoever will be moistened or anointed with the water that has been sanctified by Tulsi leaves will reap the benefits of having bathed in all the sacred rivers and performed all kinds of sacrifices. If at the time of death one drinks or gets the Tulsi leaf water, one will be freed of all his sins and proceed to Vaikuntha. Whoever drinks the Tulsi leaf water daily will be redeemed in his lifetime and will receive the benefit of a dip in the Ganges. Whoever plucks a Tulsi leaf, keeps it on his person, and then leaves his body in a holy place will go to Vishnu Loka. Anyone who worships me with this leaf daily will reap the blessings of 100,000 horse sacrifices." They go on, but I'll just read a few. "Without Tulsi, anything done in the way of worship, bathing, and offering of food and drink to Vishnu or Krishna cannot be considered real worship, bathing, or offering. Vishnu does not accept any worship or edible or drink that does not have Tulsi on it." So that's how much he loves Tulsi. So then we have a blessing for Shalagram Shila. "A Shalagram Shila, when duly worshipped at any place inhabited by any class of people, is able to purify an area with a radius of 24 miles. That area should be considered Vishnu Loka, non-different from the abode of Vishnu. If someone believing in the sanctity of Shalagram Shila, as per the verdict of the Shastra, breathes their last within that 24-mile radius, he is sure to attain mukti, salvation from material bondage." And then this is talking about keeping Shalagram and Tulsi and also the conch, because the conch is Shankachuta. When he left his body, actually, his body was cremated, and then the ashes were put into the river where the ashes actually turned into conch shells. "He who maintains the Shalagram Shila, the Tulsi, and the conch in one place becomes very dear to Lord Narayan. It is painful for a person to be separate from his beloved whose company he once enjoyed." This is actually Vishnu speaking to Tulsi. "You were the dearmost of Shankachuta for one manvantara, so it is now very difficult for you to be separated from him." So yeah, there's actually the injunction that any time that you offer water to bathe Krishna with a conch shell, that there has to be Tulsi with it. So Tulsi has to be with Shankachuta in his form as a conch shell, and of course she always needs to be with Shalagram. And yeah, Tulsi is the key ingredient to any worship of Krishna. And it's the most satisfying. We have that story, of course, of Govardhan, the Anior pastime, where Govardhan Hill was saying, give me more, and they were cooking feasts, heaps and heaps of prasad, or boga, they were offering him. Finally, Balaram, realize I just need to give him a Tulsi leaf. And then he was fully satisfied. So thank you very much. Now it's time to celebrate the wedding of Tulsi Maharani with Shalagram. Hare Krishna, thank you.